made my comeback in '91 at Paris Speedway. I had a house in Paris, and I was a local racer. And I had come back because people said that I couldn't race Speedway. We had watched the Speedway on TV. They had some kind of event every week. And I said to people, like, I used to race that sport. And they said, no, you can't race that. You're not a motorcycle racer. So I bought a Speedway bike from Warner, the guy that went to England. What's his name? And I went ahead and started racing. And I started out in Division II. And one of the top guns at the time was Mike Reed. You know, Mike was dominating at the Paris. He was a top D2 racer. And when I started, he just, kicked my butt. He was the #1 D2 rider. And I was just kind of getting my feet wet after a long layoff of Speedway. And I'm kind of like getting my wheels back. And I wanted to beat that guy. And I ended up kind of developing very fast because I used some of my old skills and kind of brought them all back. And I went ahead and advanced to Division I after winning several main events in Division II. And I ended up kind of beating that guy, Mike, who was like the top gun. And now I was the top gun. I liked that one. But I had to move up to Division I and race the big guys. So I moved up to Division I, and I started off at like the 0-yard line. And like one of my first races, I was racing at the Paris, and I had qualified for the main event. And in the main event, it was like Mike Faria, Bobby Schwartz. There was a whole list of guys. I think it was Phil Collins, and a bunch of hot riders. And they were all at the 50-yard line. Now, in the handicap racing, there's 6 riders, right, in the handicap program. And 5 of those racers were the hot guys in the very back on the 50 or 60-yard line. I think it was a 50. And I was at the 0 because it was my first division ride. And I made the handicap main event, which was pretty fantastic, I think. Now, I had many years of layoff, so this was quite, good for having all those years layoff and come back and making Division I and racing one of my first nights back in Division I against all the very top riders. And I was like racing and I couldn't really hear anything, but the announcer, Scott, he told me, he said, now look at Brian, he's at the 0-yard line. And then all the top riders were like at the 50. And he said, I'll bet any amount of money that Brian can't win the race. And some big old fat guy with a beer, drunk, he said, I'll bet you $50 that Brian will win this race. And the announcer said, excuse me? He has no chance to win this race against all these top riders, because there was only one rider at the low yardage line and there was 5 in the very back, and they were fast. So this beer guy, this drunk dude, he came up and he shook the hands of the announcer, Scott, and he said, I'm gonna go for Brian and I'll bet you $50 on that. And $50 was worth a few $100s today probably. And so Scott said, okay, because Brian has no chance to beat these top dogs, which I probably didn't. And I said to myself, Brian, just go fast, just do it. Because these guys, I knew they're all behind me. And these guys were high flyers. They were world-class racers. And I said, you gotta just give it all you have. Like, don't focus on speed, being smooth, and give it, do your best, don't worry about those guys. You're in the first place right now, so stay there. So the tapes went up, and I went for it. And I was like in first place the first lap, and I'm like, okay, keep going. And I'm riding it hard, and I'm just smooth and riding it good. And then all of a sudden it was like the third, I think the main was 6 laps. And by about the 4th lap, I was still in the lead. And the 5th lap, I was in the lead. And I'm like, I'm going to win this thing. And all of a sudden, I see Mike Faria come flying around the outside. And I go, oh, that's Faria. Oh, I got to go. And I was riding it hard. And I'm giving it everything I have. And Faria just kind of passed me, you know. And he nipped me at the finish line. And I was pissed. I got second place. But I almost won that race because I was ahead the entire 6 laps, except for lap 5.5 or 5, like that. And I was kind of mad because I wanted to win that first handicap main in Division 1, even though I was on the low yardage, right? Those guys are good. Those guys are hauling ass, man. These guys are high flyers. They can just flat out cook. And I was holding them off for like 5 laps or so. And so anyways, the race was over. I got second place. I was kind of pissed at myself because I had that race won. And I didn't make any really bad bobbles. I think I rode kind of a smooth race and a clean race and a fast race. But these guys were fast. And Faria was the United States champion at the time. So, you know, he was a little bit good. And so I felt good that at least, you know, I competed and stuff. And so the announcer told me afterwards the story. He said, you know, I told everyone that you had no chance of winning this main event. And he said this big fat beard dude, he bet me $50 that you were going to win. And I was telling the whole crowd that Brian has no chance of winning this handicap main event. And so after what happened is at lap 5, when I was getting passed by Faria, that big man, that beard dude that made the bet, he got up out of his seat knowing that Faria was going to beat me, and he started like beelining it down the stands, out of the arena, knowing that this guy was going to have to pay $50 to Scott, the announcer. So anyways, the race got over with, and Scott, he turned and looked at the beard dude, and he was gone. And then he saw him running down the stairs, and Scott's like, hey, stop that guy. He owes me $50. Stop him. Stop him. And the guy's running faster because he knows that, like, people, the security and stuff sees him. And he's hauling butt, and he's really working his way out of the arena and into his car in the parking lot next to the Speedway track so he could not pay the $50. He wanted the $50. But knowing that he was going to lose the $50, he didn't want to have to pay. So he left, and Scott got cheated the $50. And that was kind of a funny story that everyone was betting against me except one drunk beer dude. And then he didn't pay. He left before the race was over. So that was kind of a funny story. And I, you know, just did the best I could. And I didn't really know any of this stuff was going on. Because when you're racing and on the track, you know, your head's not into the announcing booth and what's happening with all the talk and stuff. You're focused on the race. And I really wanted that race so bad. And I missed it by, you know, this much. But that's okay. You know, life is on. We win some, we lose some. But I competed heavily against the top dogs. And, you know, having these guys on your tail 6 laps, you know, is really pretty intimidating. But I didn't let it get to me. I just like rode my heart out. And for me, you know, I didn't pull it off at the end. But Scott lost $50.